always makes me laugh. So yeah, I really enjoyed that match. I think it was good, and definitely you could tell these two guys had chemistry if they could do it there. So yeah, it was a good match for me. And of course, even though Owen Hart got the victory, I think the way it was done was kind of okay, and he didn't kind of kill too much of Shamrock because of the whole ending. And of course, you get to see that Severin doesn't see the other side, and all the rest of it. So it's kind of a little bit of protecting going on there, but I think it's making it go on a little bit longer, which is the whole idea. Okay, so speaking of Jerry Lawler as well, around this time, Matt, it's worth pointing out that fun fact as well, he has started filming for the movie Man on the Moon, about the late comedian Andy Kaufman, which he's going to start. He's obviously was involved in with Jim Carrey. It's a great film for anybody that hasn't seen it, and for anybody that doesn't know Andy Kaufman, it's definitely an eye opener. And his involvement with Memphis Wrestling definitely worth checking out, for sure. Okay, so Raw on the 27th of July now, coming from Anaheim. Basically now we've got D'Lo Brown, who beats Ken Shamrock via DQ in a European title match. Brown did something to Severin earlier, and Severin interfered, causing Shamrock to lose. So they wanted to go at it to continue their issues. Then we get to, I want to rush on to August the 10th, 1998. Ken Shamrock, around this time, is beating Owen Hart on the Canadian house shows, which is interesting. And it's pretty much penciled in at this time that they are going to do Owen Hart versus Shamrock in a Lion's Den match, which will be similar to a UFC structure, with the rules similar to a UFC match. That's what they're reporting at that time. Matt, the idea of doing that in WWF, do you think that, because it's interesting, and I know it's kind of set up like, well, you've been in my house, now you've got to come to my domain, this is my world. But even though they're doing that, Matt, do you think that was did it hurt Shamrock to be still associated so much with MMA? I guess that's what I'm trying to say. But do you think it hurt him more that they kept referencing it so much and he didn't kind of get into that zone of trying to get to a WWF superstar, I guess as it's called, or do you think it was a positive thing at this point?
No, I would say it was kind of a positive thing because, coming into wrestling, everyone's got to have their thing. You've all got to have your gimmick. Of course, and being from the UFC and being a legit cage fighter was Shamrock's thing. So to keep referencing it wasn't such a bad thing to me. I mean, if you look at what other people were doing back then with Undertaker doing very low matches, because he's an Undertaker, it just kind of fits, I guess. So they would go through loads of crazy kind of match types, and to be fair, some of the matches like casket matches and all the stuff that they were coming up with, I think a cage match in a sort of Lion's Den was actually one of the more sensible ones.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. Just wanted your opinion on that. Okay, so then we go to 24th of the 8th here, and Ken Shamrock finally and Dan Severin actually hook up in the first ever pro wrestling meeting. This doesn't end in very long time, Matt. This lasts all of just under 3 minutes when Owen Hart ran in and Shamrock and put him in a Dragon Sleeper. Shamrock got as much out of Severin as anyone, but fans weren't into it. This seemed like a huge foul at this point. I think that the way Meltzer's reporting it, that the fact that it took place on Raw kind of suggests that WWF had kind of, maybe made a bad decision on the investment of Severin altogether. And, obviously I know that there was a run-in, but, it just didn't seem like... I think, as far as Severin having that charisma, being that sort of charismatic type guy that you've got to be as a babyface, I'm not sure he would have had that, Matt. And maybe they should have probably tied him in with Cornette a bit longer and had him as a heel rather than trying to establish this guy as a babyface. What's your take on that, Matt? And is there anything you can add to the reason it never combinated in a feud in the end, and a big, I'm sure they were hoping this was going to make money at some point.
Yeah, well, I've got to agree with what you said there. I don't think he had enough of a heel run in the company. I think that was his ultimate downfall. You do get an incredible amount of exposure as a face. You really do have to sort of carry yourself and your own momentum, like I said, and charisma wise, it's very difficult, especially when you're coming into the business the professional wrestling business, and only having a year or so under your belt of experience. You need a lot more protecting, and I think Cornette would have done wonders for him under those circumstances.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. I think you definitely need the voice, the mouthpiece. Fun fact now, just after this one, the WWF Toys have put Jax. I'm sure everybody knows that name, Jax Pacific. They started to produce the new line of toys, figures. I think before that it was always somebody else. I can't think who it was, the makers. But Jax come on board around this time, and they were literally put on the map by the WWF. Jax had grossed a reported just under 1 million during the second quarter of 1998 on the WWF Toys alone. The WWF is among the top 5 best-selling action figures. So, doing very well there in terms of selling merchandise at this time. Seemed like they had quite a big thing going on in the market. So now I want to get us to SummerSlam, which, of course, as I reported earlier, does come from Madison Square Garden. And, of course, this is an interesting thing, Matt. When was the last time did you watch this match recently? I can't remember if I sent this one to you or is this something I didn't. I can't remember if you have any memories of this at all.
Which one is this? Which match you?
This is the SummerSlam Lions Den match between Owen and Ken Shamrock.
Okay, I haven't actually watched this one in quite some time. Actually,
yeah.
I should have. Should have studied up on this one a bit more. But
that's cool.
I haven't actually seen this one for quite some time, so I'll be very interested to hear your opinion on it.
Yeah, sure. Well, the thing is with this, and I kind of agree as well with Meltzer on this, is that it took place in a theatre, so it wasn't kind of where it needed to be in a sense. And I think when you kind of book this and people that are going there kind of think this is going to happen in front of them, it's kind of a bit odd that then you're gonna in a match in a theatre. But Ken Shamrock, let's just put it this way, Ken Shamrock gets the win back on Owen Hart in the Lions Den match. 9 minutes 16 seconds. Meltzer reports a really good match. The build up to the match was very good. WWF built a very small structure with a 9-foot high cage, similar to a UFC octagon, but with far less fighting area. Hart bled early from the mouth. Shamrock kept getting whipped into the cage. Seemed like it was going on forever for a while. Obviously, he was blading himself, but not getting any blood out. That was quite a big problem in this one. I think if you go and watch that match, you'll see them having quite a few problems trying to use the blade for sure. And again, just for people that maybe don't know what I'm talking about, we're talking about when wrestlers, of course, at this time were still using blades to cut themselves, make the blood. It was a very thing that was pretty. It wasn't used sort of week in, week out, but it was very much part of the culture at that time. Still around this sort of era. But yeah, Meltzer reports a very hard wrestling and a unique environment. Wasn't overly pro wrestling, wasn't overly UFC, was what it was. It was its own kind of stuff. He gives this match a 3.5, so he gives it a little bit more than obviously the last one, probably due to the time. They had a little bit more room and space. But yeah, it's interesting that the whole way it went round. It's worth reporting that when Shamrock kicked out and escaped, at the end, that they had an appearance from Dan Severn, who was outside the cage watching, and he he would be involved to a certain extent. Like they seem like they were never ever through with that. But yeah, I think overall, I think it was pretty much thumbs up, and I think that Shamrock does get the win back. And if you think about his year so far, Matt, I mean, all right, the only thing I think that he could have. There was a chance of doing better was probably winning the Intercontinental Championship at WrestleMania, but he's a king of the ring. He's he's won here. He's got that loss back already. So it looks like he's still on a nice steady path here, Matt. He's like, I mean, I would consider him upper mid card wrestler at this point in WWF for sure. Go on, mate.
No, I would agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. So the night after, there's a match between the DOA versus Ken Shamrock and Steve Blackman, and basically it just turns into a whole brawl at the end of it, and not going too many other places. The Raw after that, we get to have Ken Shamrock versus Mark Henry. At that Raw. Interesting fun fact here, Matt. And again, we're reporting in September of '98 now. Kurt Angle has signed a multi-year contract with the WWF. His next work will be at the September training camp. So he signed with WWF at this time. Worth pointing out to everybody. And of course, we are in September 1998. And yeah, it looks like now it's reported here from the Wrestling Observer around this time as well. It looks like they are going to heavily push this coming weekend with an Austin versus Ken Shamrock match for a Raw main event in San Jose when they head back. This match itself, it did actually happen, but it was interesting that WWF were putting Shamrock in that category, considering where Steve Austin was. Another fun fact here to point out that Ken Shamrock, there's a movie where Ken Shamrock was in the film itself called Champions. Don't know if you ever heard of that, Matt, where Shamrock plays, get this, a UFC star. It's been released shortly to video, so I didn't go anywhere else. But I can't say I've ever seen it, but yeah, I just got that as a fun fact. Didn't realise that he'd been in it. So, if I can get my hands on it, I'll check that out for sure. Didn't know if you'd ever heard about it, Matt.
No, I must have missed that one at the time.
Yeah.
Maybe it's worth going back on and checking out.
It's worth reporting submission matches are still happening at house shows between Shamrock and Owen Hart, and Shamrock is winning the majority of those ones as well. So the Raw finally does come from San Jose, and finally... which is, it ends with Austin on a no contest with Ken Shamrock in a match that goes about 13 minutes. Meltzer reports a solid match with a lot of heat, ending when Undertaker and Kane came out. Taker chokeslammed Shamrock to get him out of the picture, and they went to work on Austin. I'm sure you all vaguely remember when Kane and Undertaker decided to team up with one another around this period. During this process. September 28th now, 1998, and what we got here? We got a couple of... thought we did a fun fact. No, we haven't. And we hit WWF Breakdown. Remember that one, Matt? That pay-per-view, classic name again. Unfortunately, there's a no-show from Ken Shamrock at this one. Supposedly... the idea is needed to turn Severn babyface again, since they're going to heel Ken Shamrock. But there's probably a lot more to it than that. Severn came out with the NWA and UFC belts. If you're looking for a clue, he was also super over since they were in Detroit and the fans were really into the match. So there's still more issues. It seems like WWF will never give up on the whole Severn Shamrock dynamic here, and they're trying to, now that they look like they want to turn Shamrock heel and they want to have Severn, basically what's happened here is that during the whole Owen Hart Shamrock kind of feud after what happened in the basement, Matt, where Severin,